21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
So I wrote the book Unstuck, a smart guide to purposeful career redesign. It was in the pandemic, actually. I was being asked for more offerings than I had. At the heart of my coaching has always been one-to-one coaching. It still is, and it probably will never change because I absolutely love it. However, there were just so many people who needed support and help at that time, and there was less and less scrutiny by the corporates that we all inhabited, or not me, but they all inhabited. So they had more freedom, and they had that particularly heady cocktail of, uncertainty as well in the mix. Would their job, would their sector, would their role survive a pandemic? What else would they do? Or frankly, knowing that they really wanted, with a bit of time, stepping back from their being in the bricks and mortar building, they wanted to redesign their career, but let's use this pocket of time that's so strange to figure out what that looks like. I did put together an online course, and having done that, I noticed that I was literally writing the sort of modules, other people might call it, as chapters. And there was a book outline, and it's a distillation of the process that I've been using with one-to-one high-end clients at this point for nearly 10 years to help people make purposeful career redesigns, which really means realign work that they love with the life they wish they were living and those things that matter most to them. So in a nutshell, that's become Unstuck. And the point of it is all about helping people who feel horrendously disconnected from work that's wrong, but either don't know what they should do or could do for their next career chapter, or have exactly the idea in mind, but don't know how to get there. So it's really a roadmap. It's a formula. There's 3 acts within it, and it leads people through a very specific process that over the years I've honed and really worked out what shifts things, the important things for people, so that they can navigate their blocks and barriers and actually achieve the aligned career transformation they want for themselves. Of course, you don't come to this kind of work without a career story of your own, and that's no different for me. Career one for me was a 20-year tour of duty in the world's largest public relations firms in London, and honestly, from the outside, it looked very successful and very shiny. I had a beautiful office in Covent Garden. I was on the board. I was young and had achieved a lot already and worked on world-leading brands with enormous budgets at my disposal and running a team. And it was all good, apart from I felt I was promoted so far away from those things that I got job joy from, that I actually enjoyed and was wonderful at. And instead, my focus was delegating to other people to do those things I used to get joy from, and the P&L. And it took me a long time to realize that, yes, I could do these things. There were competencies, they were strengths, but they were also serving the needs of other people, external others, the business in this case. And eventually, once I became a mum, I worked out that actually that wasn't okay. My own mother had died when I was a teenager, and I couldn't have predicted, I don't think, the kind of fierce version of sort of mothering that I wanted to do for my first, well, and my second, but that was my first experience of it. And that junction of motherhood, careering and mothering just really wasn't compatible at that level. It was an international firm I worked for. I was on and off planes around Europe a lot. I was very absent. So it was going against something that really I felt very, very violating for me. And I didn't understand about values at the time. I didn't understand any of the psychology in play, but immense career conflict was what I was living with. And in the end, that beat me. I took redundancy. We moved to New York from London shortly after. So I kind of gave myself permission to do life very, very differently. By this time, our family was growing, and that felt like high flying in a completely different way that was prioritizing the mothering. Now, the problem was that wasn't enough either. The kids do grow up, don't they? They progress, and then what? What's the point of you? If you've decided the point of view and you've made your kids so central, you sort of need to relearn or redefine success for yourself in that next chapter. And I'd always been very clear when I looked away from the sort of traditional professional trajectory that there would be another career chapter. And I didn't know what that was, but it would be okay. I would design it. So then I thrashed around for so many years. I now call them my lost years. And in many ways, my story is the hard path, isn't it? Because I tried a bunch of things. I wrote a book with a friend of a topic of her choosing. I worked with charities and fundraising. I went back into PR, but for an angel investor. So it was sort of short, sharp projects rather than work. I tried everything, only to realize every single time that I was solving the wrong career problem somehow. It wasn't that I wasn't moving. It wasn't that I wasn't achieving. It wasn't that outside others would still look in and say, how interesting, that's success. It wasn't doing it for me. So eventually I followed my curiosity. We moved back to the UK. I boomeranged back actually to an old PR firm, and that really, really brought it home. You can't go back. It was like being in one of those movies where you see the screen go all wiggly and there's a time warp, and you walk back on the floor that felt so familiar. And yes, the cast of characters has changed and a few things have changed, but actually it was so clear that I had been transported back to a time that I didn't belong. And that was the final straw for me, actually. I tried to sort of keep pace with the demands of that role at that level, and with now an established family, and ended up in front of an X-ray machine having a lung capacity check because I'd got so run down trying to do both things badly that didn't work. And that, as I say, was the final straw. So instead, I decided to follow my curiosity and not worry so much about where it was going to take me, and aiming for this sort of linear plan that this was a goal I was going to set, and therefore here are the steps, stick to it, and go the other way. Following my curiosity for me went going all the way back to university, and I did a second degree, this time in psychology, and put myself under huge amounts of pressure to perform well, and got a first as my reward. So it was amazing. I was feeling alive for the first time in literally years. And I think I talk now about that feeling of alive and aligned for that reason. That's the magic sauce for any of us to feel fulfilled in that thing we do. And it doesn't matter whether other people look in and understand or respect or it has status. It matters whether you are feeling purpose driven doing it, whether you're pursuing something that is so purposeful, you have the stamina to strive for as long as it takes to actually succeed. And that was a massive realization for me. And honestly, I haven't looked back since. It started a journey of lifelong learning that I suspect I will literally never finish at this point. Since then, I've added really rigorous leadership coaching with CTI, positive psychology trainings. I'm a narrative therapist as well. The other day, I was invited onto an MBA for organizational psychology, and almost caught myself saying, yes, I need to think about it and pace these things, but I will never stop learning. And that's a commitment really to myself, actually, rather than sort of the accolades of what it brings. It's that feeling of aliveness, the stimulation that I really value. And that that entire journey, which took years, but we've romped through at speed, is how I came about what I now call my 3-act formula for purposeful career redesign. And the reason that I talk about purposeful leadership in companies in much the same way. So it all tracks back to my past story, and I guess I'm looking to solve for purpose, whether it's individuals or companies that I collaborate with. I think people feel a growing sense that they need something to change. I don't think it's something that anybody wakes up and has clarity about. It's something that starts as a little whisper in the ear or sort of tug on the sleeve, and it grows up to something that is completely undeniable and untenable. They walk through every day at work feeling like it's bankrupt of all meaning. And crucially, this is even if they're good at it. I call that a success trap. I think actually it can be particularly hard to be sort of experiencing that version of career stuckness because there's nothing wrong from the outside. It's a long way down. There's status, there's respect, there's finances that makes our world go round, there's obligations, there's responsibilities. And often the people I work with one-to-one for sure are seasoned professionals, and they're very smart. And that is a very common situation. What has happened, though, is for whatever their reasons are, they've become disillusioned or disconnected, and they're stuck in a role, they're stuck performing a role that they can do, but is no longer resonant for them. And that is where the opposite stick starts to sort of grow, this horrifying dissonance that in the end, we have to do something about. We cannot stay that unhappy, loathing what we do every day to retirement. And when we finally understand, and this is usually, if I'm very honest, after these smart professional people have tried a few things on their own, because of course you would, you recognize that actually what you're solving is the wrong problem somehow, because what this stuckness, this thing that's quite intangible, this disconnect, appears again 6 months, 9 months down the line, and really all you've changed is maybe the commute or the title or the cast of characters around you, because you've carried that career problem with you. And what you need to do is take a step back and decide, probably with some support and objectivity and thought partnership, what is the right problem to solve? Because that's the smart start point for any of us to redesign our careers. Of course, not everyone experiences the same version of a career crossroads. And it's really important, or it was really important to me, knowing that through my work, that I wrote a book that was going to be picked up by anyone feeling less than happy in their career. Now, that might sound bold, but Gallup just told us all about 85% worldwide people in their careers are unhappy in work that they're performing at the moment. So that's an enormous percentage. It's not just a little sort of silo of my particular clients. I think lots of people are less than happy. So whether somebody has been made redundant, lost their role, and feeling that they need to replace what they've just lost, and that's the career problem, or whether they're actually quite committed to their careers and they're working hard and hoping for elevation that never seems to be coming, and that's their stuckness. How do they get noticed? How do they get promoted into leadership? It doesn't, for me, it didn't matter. The point was the formula works for everyone. So the book is made up of 3 acts. There is the act of alignment, there is the act of career redesign, there is the act of transformation at the end. And between them, they spell out act. And had a bit of fun with that, because that's really what aligned career transformation stands for. So alignment is really all about, what does any career redesign need to align with if it's going to have you feeling fulfilled once you've stepped into it. Now, this, for some people, is a bit of a go slow. They want to hurtle straight to the meat of the sandwich, but actually it's really important to calibrate what I call a career compass first. And that's what happens in the act of alignment. A career compass has 3 components, and we really interrogate quite introspectively, very, very closely, quite personally, the things that make that up. And that's strengths, which I think most professionals are sort of reasonably fluent at, not always ever so comfortable to own them, but we're a bit more comfortable to step into that conversation. What are we best at? But we very quickly look at, and what do you enjoy most? Who values these things? Is it you, or is it outside others again? And just really make sure that, yes, any career redesign plan needs to be strengths-based, because otherwise we're in fantasy land as we ideate, and that's not actually going to help us. We need to leverage things we're genuinely strong at, but we also need to repurpose them and reimagine the next career chapter and sort of point our superpowers, if you like, to something that we're passionate about, that feels purposeful to us. So we very quickly shift into values. And put simply, those are the things that we hold most closely. What do we care about the most? What matters to us? And this is harder work. It's very easy, I think, for people to rattle off a list of aspirational terms or words, but it is not easy to drill down to just 2, or maybe 3, but no more, that you actually live into and activate in your life. That is the filter through which you make every choice in your career and outside of work. And that takes some calibrating. It all operates under the conscious, and it shifts over time in response to life's events and happenings. So it's not easy, but it's important. Strengths are really the tools. They're like the fuel that we put in the car to go on this career redesign journey. Values set the direction. So those are the 2 important components of the compass. And the third that finishes the calibration is purpose. And it's probably the most important one. We get a little bit bigger picture here. So we're very introspective with strengths and values. Purpose sort of takes a wider view. What do you stand for? What do, if you think about legacy, what do you want to have stood for when, you're at your own funeral, sort of looking down and hearing people appreciating something that you contributed to them or to the world in some way? Your world doesn't have to be that grand, but it does have to be purposeful and important. So that's Act 1. Once we've got that, we can step into career design, which is a completely different gear now. Very action oriented, not introspective anymore, other than we do keep checking our own temperature and noticing how we feel as we put together a series of pilot tests and go on a what next quest. So we start thinking it's small steps that we can take realistically now. We don't make an entire grand plan. We don't go and collect courses and qualifications necessarily. We act. So this is really important, and it's a lot about the agile career mindset in that sense. It starts with ideation. So I borrow from tools from my own career, one for this, and help people who might not have it in an everyday sort of part of their job to ideate not 1, but usually 3 different career lives. So we get rid of, or we shake off that dysfunctional belief that there's one true pathway that you should be on, or you were on, and you deserve to be on. And we shake that off and instead think about, well, what else might you do? and come up with a few things. The what next quest in the pilot test is about naming it all. What are the hopes? What do you hope to gain? What are you curious about? What would you like to know more? What would you like to test yourself in the environment of? And some of this is experiential and some of it's conversational. But by the end of that chapter, whether it's the book or the online course, you have so much rich incoming information that you've been able to tweak and recalibrate that compass again and again. Is this getting you closer to what you said was going to feel purposeful or not? Because if not, that's not right. And is it what you thought? Sometimes we want experience in a world that's been closed to us, and we can't possibly know until we've created an experience for ourselves. So we need to keep checking, is this working for us? Or has that just revealed something we couldn't have foreseen, and let's adjust again? And the third act is transformation, because ever so sadly, having an amazing career redesign plan isn't actually ever enough. We need the mental mastery, the mindset mastery, to also stick at it, striving long enough to actually succeed. So we get into, I draw on sort of the narrative therapy and the positive psychology in this piece. We get onto the inner obstacles. What is it that might hold you stuck? Most of us carry inner characters, inner critics that are pretty effective at holding us back, and they will dial up their volume as we get closer to what we want, because to them that feels like risk, and that will have come from some past story, past narrative. So we look back at that narrative, we check for the origin story, because once it's visible, then we get to pivot to our preferred story. What do we wish would happen next, and what action or what behavior would we need to adopt in order for that to be true the next time we notice that tipping point, that trigger might hold us stuck. And it's the same with outer barriers. We get very practical as well. There's sometimes geography, there's sometimes finance, there's sometimes family imperatives. There's all sorts of outer things that, because this is disruptive. Any change is not convenient, it's disruptive. So we need to counter for that as well. And I think the important thing, whether it's inner obstacles or outer ones, we anticipate them. Because if we do the preparedness before we're in motion, then actually we've already done the cognitive heavy lifting. We know how to navigate, how to resolve, how to flip to the other plan instead at this point, so that they don't have the power to hold us stuck anymore. And that is probably the most important truth about transformation. It takes time, but never more than we actually need. I think the fascinating thing for me is blending my career 1 with my career 2 and packaging it all up with a big purposeful thread running all the way through it. And what I've noticed in starting to collaborate with companies is that the same point about purpose, being a business of purpose, fostering a purposeful culture, is absolutely integral to growth as well as happiness. So it's not just a trend. And I think more and more I'm noticing this getting some airtime. It's getting the attention of entrepreneurs and leadership in businesses for sure. And as I'm starting to work more and more in collaboration with them, I'm noticing how much impact it has. There are certainly statistics that show where we feel that our work is meaningful, where we feel we're enjoying and benefiting from a culture of purpose in our companies. There is enormous growth and incredible loyalty like no other. So what happens is, it's not a sort of nice to have add-on. It's not like the old school mission statements that leadership would come up with in a room somewhere and then sort of hope would trickle down because they said them out loud. It's much more meaningful. And for me, the work that I do with companies and workshops and presentations and talks and sort of with teams, or companies, is we find that thread. Where is there synergy? between what the business purpose is, what it exists to solve, and the people. What do the people who populate that company find purposeful? Now, that can be on a very individual level. It can be about their career design, hopes and aspirations. It can be about the cause, if sometimes the company is cause related, and sort of take them, they feel meaningful just because they're connected to the greater good in that sense. It will be something different for everyone. And this is where purposeful leadership is maybe not the easiest, because it's bespoke, right? It's really important that this kind of leader brings quite a lot of themselves to their leadership role and takes time, not just to listen, but to act on what they're hearing. How do we connect the dots from the people who populate that team and really help them pull through the thread of their own sense of purpose in their work? And that's immensely important, and it feels like it closes the loop for me, actually, if I'm very honest, and for a lot of people who maybe are perfectly committed to their careers but struggling for that missing ingredient, they're not getting something. It's this kind of culture of purpose that is the answer, because maybe I would have felt more engaged in PR had that been attached to a purpose that I felt truly resonated for me and was personally significant. We'll never know. But it's certainly been the answer for people who I've had the pleasure of supporting. Transformation doesn't always need to mean big supporting change, whether it's for businesses or individuals. Sometimes redesign is just really strategic thought and tweaking. And that comes from a culture of purpose, for sure. We've talked about a lot. If you want to find out more about working with me, there is an awful lot on my website, helenhanison.com. That's where to go to find out about the book. And actually, if you buy the book through the website, there's a whole load of special gifts you get for the privilege of doing so. But you'll also be able to find out there about Purposeful Career Redesign, the companion course to the book. And for companies who prioritise fostering a culture of purpose, there's a few really key workshops and talks that I find work particularly well, that you'll also find on the website, and different ways of booking me for speaking or working with me in some way there as well. The nice thing about going on the website is you will notice there is an act quiz, as I call it, that pops up. You don't have to go hunting for it. It'll just sort of show up and invite you to find out what kind of stuck you might be. So it goes through in about 1 minute flat and assesses where you're stuck. Is it alignment? Is it career redesign? Is it transformation? And I think it's probably the very first step that helps people just really percolate on what is holding them stuck, if they're very honest, and therefore what to really focus on to change that for themselves. The other thing I love to do is foster meaningful connections of my own. So LinkedIn is a fantastic community for me to do that. So do, hop on and ask to connect, and we'll be in touch there too.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.